Hey kids, it's Trevy the Great with another Warhammer Fantasy Battle report for you guys today. This is again with my Beastmen versus the polar opposite of the army that I played in my last report. And I am playing against High Elves today rather than Dark Elves. So we'll see how this game goes against the High Elves, sort of evil twin brothers. Here's my army. It's very similar to the one I played in my last report. I have 2 units of 30 gores. So as you can see, I've dropped the best gores out of my list. They were really useful in my last game, but I'm just not a big fan of best gores in the game right now as it stands. So I dropped them for another unit of 30 gores just to see how that went. I also used the points that I had saved to get myself a Beast Lord, so I got that Leadership 9 for my army, and 2 level 2 wizards, one with a Dispel Scroll, one with a Feedback Scroll, because I was really scared of spells like that Purple Sun or Comet of Cassandora, or spells like that that could really do some damage to my units, and especially my Minotaur units, which are the big heavy hitters in my army. Speaking of Minotaurs, just like last game, I have 2 units of 4 Minotaurs with additional hand weapons, and I have leading them in one unit is a Gorbull with the Hellfire Banner and a Doom Bull. Here's a shot of my opponent's army before the game started. He's got a relatively small force compared to mine. He's got a unit of 10 Swordmasters with the Banner of Sorcery, which gives him D3 power dice in the magic phase. He's got a big unit of 20 archers. He's got a unit of Lothern Sea Guard. He's got 2 wizards, a level 4 wizard and a level 2 wizard on a steed with the Silver Wand, which gives him an extra spell. He's got a prince with the Ogre Blade on a Elven steed, and then he's got a hero, and to be honest, I don't remember what the hero had. And he's got a noble with his battle standard, and the noble is carrying the battle banner, which gives his unit D6 power dice in the combat phase. No, wow, I just said power dice. I mean combat resolution. I must sound like a Muppet right now. And he's also got a repeater bolt thrower. So here's the deployment of the game and the terrain setup. As you can see, there's a building on my side. There's a big old hill in the middle. And then there's 2 forests in each of the corners, and there's a piece of impassable terrain in my opponent's in the top left of the picture. It's sort of like these mesa looking things. They're pretty cool. I won the role to deploy, so I decided to deploy on this side because I wanted to make use of that building. I deployed a unit of Gores with both of my wizards in it right behind that building, so that they could jump into that and try to be safe from all the missile fire that would be coming at them. My opponent wisely put his unit of archers in the back, my right. They're off the picture right now. You can't really see them, but that threw my whole deployment off because I wasn't sure where he was going to put his actual combat units, the ones that I really wanted to get to grips with. I think I could have, because of all my guys are toughness 4. I probably could have dealt with the archers shooting, and especially if they were all the way over in the back, and they weren't going to really affect the game. I didn't really need to take care of them, but what I really wanted to know was where his bigger units were being put down. So I ended up deciding that it was probably a good idea to put my Minotaurs on this side of the hill, because either his combat units were going to go on this side of the hill and we would get to grips with each other pretty early, which is what I want, or they would go on the other side of the hill and I would be safe from shooting for a couple turns, and it would just basically limit the amount of casualties that would be done over the course of the game. So my opponent ended up putting both of his combat units, both of his Lothern Sea Guard and his what do you call it, the Swordmaster's unit on this side, along with his Archmage. His Prince and his level 2 Wizard are on the other side of the hill. You can't really see them right now. And then the Repeater Bolt Thrower is off the picture to the right. So this is after, or I think a little bit of the way through the second turn of the game. As you can see, both of my Minotaur units have gotten successful charges off on both the Swordmasters and the Lothern Sea Guard. Those combats at this point have not been resolved yet, although you can see my Minotaurs have taken a couple wounds from shooting before they got in. My Gores over there have turned around because the Prince and his little level 2 buddy on horses are going to come around this side, and I want to be able to deal with them with the sheer number of attacks that Gores can put out. I took my Beast Lord, who was in that unit, I took him out of the unit, and moved him back a little bit so he could give the Minotaurs Leadership 9, but also so that he didn't get charged by the Prince and then be forced into a challenge, because I really didn't want to lose my my Beast Lord, who doesn't have a lot of upgrades. I did that so that he wouldn't have he wouldn't cost as many points because I needed the points for my Doom Bowl. So he's hiding behind that Gore unit. Hopefully he doesn't get pegged by the Bolt Thrower, but the Bolt Thrower right now is pretty much dealing with trying to shoot some Gores out of that building right now, which I thought was sort of strange. He could have been shooting at much more juicy targets, but you know, who am I to judge? So we'll see how these combats go at the end of the second turn. Well, unfortunately, the result is not very well for me. As you can see, the Swordmaster unit with the Battle Standard there has wiped out my Minotaur unit with the Battle Standard. My opponent got an insane round of attacks against me and was able to do 11 wounds to the Minotaur unit, which, along with the attacks from the Battle Standard Bearer, wiped out the entire unit. All I had was my Battle Standard Bearer left, who attacked back and killed, as you can see, killed a number of High Elves, but along with that Battle Banner, I was losing by something like 14 points. So I did not have the static combat resolution to hold that unit up, and I needed the Insane Courage double ones to hold my Battle Standard, and that didn't happen. So he was automatically killed because he was run down by the enemy. So that is an enormous points loss to me very early on in the game. So I got to try to claw that back, basically. And I start doing that over with this Lothern Seaguard. I won by quite a few points. He had a hero in that unit who challenged out my Doom Bowl. My Doom Bowl pretty handily killed the hero. But I didn't do enough wounds to really take enough ranks out because my Doom Bowl was not in combat with the actual Seaguard. So the unit had enough ranks to be steadfast that turn and held the Minotaurs up, which was too bad for me. So this is the end of turn 3 or 4. As you can see, my Minotaurs did succeed in breaking the Lothern Seaguard unit, which has now been reduced to 3 models. And then they pursued that unit into the Repeater Bolt Thrower, which they pretty easily just wiped out off the map with their impact hits. And then the overrun from that sent them off the board. So right now they are off the board. We just put them there to denote where they were, and they would come on in my next turn. I made the mistake of charging my general into the Swordmaster unit. I figured that I could do a couple of wounds and possibly even kill the Battle Standard Bearer. In retrospect, this was an absolutely horrible move, and I was basically just trying to claw back points and get revenge for my poor fallen Minotaurs. But that Battle Banner, they had with the Battle Banner, they had so much combat res that my lone character couldn't hope to make that all back unless he wiped out most of the unit. So I really that was a bad move. He ended up taking a wound from a challenge. He got challenged by the champion and had to accept because there were no ranks to hide behind. He killed the champion pretty easily, but like I said, just didn't have enough combat res to win the combat, and he fled and was run down. So, I don't know, playing sort of like a Muppet right now, but let's see if I can scrape it back with these Gores. So here's my opponent's turn. As you can see, the Swordmasters and the Prince have charged into the Gores to try to do some damage, and his level 2 wizard has moved up onto that hill to try to get some spells off. I believe he has the Lore of the High Elves, and he's got Fury of Cain, which is a direct damage, a magic missile spell, and some other buff spells that he wants to cast on some of the units over here. I was sort of happy about that because one of my wizards has an Amber Spear who's hiding in that building, so I would be able to fire that at the wizard and try to get some quick points. My opponent did throw a bunch of dice at Coven of Casadora from his level 4 wizard, who I believe ended up failing to cast it, but I used my feedback scroll. I actually remember this time, so I'm patting myself on the back for that. And I rolled 3 6s on the wounds from the feedback scroll, and it destroyed his wizard with that spell, which was an enormous points gain for me. So as you can see, the Swordmasters in combat with the Gores did not fare so well. Because the Battle Standard Bearer had a magic banner, he wasn't allowed to take any other magic items, so he didn't have a lot of defense. He only had heavy armor, I believe. So the number of attacks that I was able to put on him from the Gores that were in combat was with their additional hand weapons and Primal Fury was enough for me to kill the standard bearer and one of the other sword masters after he had struck, which was pretty good because I've almost destroyed that swordmaster unit, and I got some pretty serious points back for killing that battle standard. His prince charged the gores in the front, like I said, and was able to do a couple wounds, but I'm getting an enormous number of attacks back. So hopefully I'll be able to kill the prince just through sheer number of attacks. So unfortunately, I neglected to take many pictures throughout the rest of the game, but I will explain what happened here. Um, as you can see from this picture, both the Gores, the Swordmasters, and the Prince have mysteriously disappeared from the battlefield. What happened was the Gores were able to pretty easily kill the last Swordmaster and give me points for that unit. And then after 2 or 3 rounds of combat, the Gores, just through getting virtue of getting 9 attacks from additional hand weapons and supporting attacks on the Prince every turn, were able to do enough wounds and get through his 2+ armor save. So that they could eventually kill him, because while he's a super duper elf hero dude, he is only toughness 3, so he's pretty easy to wound. So all pumped from that, the Gores were then stuck there in the middle of the battlefield, and ripe targets for those archers to move up and just paste them with missile fire. So unfortunately, everyone in that combat is now dead. The Minotaurs over on my side came back into the board, and his Sea Guard tried to run away, but unfortunately they got caught by the Minotaurs, and they were all wiped out by impact hits. So the Sea Guard were killed, and pretty much the only units left on the board on my opponent's side were the archers and his level 2 wizard, while I still had my Gore unit, both of my wizards, my Doom Bolt, and his Minotaurs. So calculating points at the end, it went pretty decisively to me. I think the points difference was 300 or 400 points in the end, which I was pretty impressed with, because honestly, I was playing like a total lunatic this game, and I made a whole bunch of tactical blunders, and I was just happy with the fact that I could drag this victory out of the jaws of defeat. So I'm going to go back to the picture of the deployment here while I sort of talk about what I feel that I did incorrectly. As you can see, my deployment is sort of spread out all over the place, which is something that does not work very well for this army, an army that is mainly based around a couple little hard-hitting units. So the problem was that my battle standard radius and my general radius were pretty far separated from the rest of the army, and I honestly have no idea why I deployed them like that. It would have been much smarter to pretty much move my Minotaur units over about 6 inches over to the right, so that, and then put the general in the center of the group, so that the army was all benefiting from the general's leadership. And that also would have put the other flank of my opponent's army out of the game for a couple more turns, and maybe allowed me to turn it around a little more easily. My next blunder obviously was charging the Battle Center Bearer with his Minotaur unit into the Swordmasters. That was a really stupid move, although I did not know that my opponent had the Battle Banner at that time, so I did not know he was going to get that many combat resolution from his Battle Standard Bearer. He also got a really lucky roll for his attacks that round of combat, and I also forgot my impact hits at the beginning of combat. He let me do it later, but we didn't rectify the number of wounds that I took, because obviously I had forgotten about that. So I think if I remember all my cool special rules next time, that'll be awesome. The last thing that I didn't do that I should have done was keep my wizards in an easy casting radius of my army. Whison's Wild Form, which I put on all of my wizards, is an incredibly powerful spell, because it allows me to boost my Minotaurs to toughness 5, which makes it which makes a normal elf require 6s to wound me, which is totally awesome. And what I did was, I was basically too scared of the elven shooting, so I put my my troops inside that building, and I really didn't need it. His shooting was not powerful enough to really warrant my hiding like a little kid like that. Of course, I think my opponent could have done a couple things better. First of all, he didn't really target his bolt thrower at my Minotaurs, and Minotaurs should be a #1 target for bolt throwers. They're so easy to just paste with those giant spears. So I think that's something he could have been doing. He was shooting at my Gore unit for most of the game, and I think that was pretty silly. He also, I didn't really understand why he put his bolt thrower on this side of the battlefield. I guess he wanted a clear shot at my troops, but it could have done a lot more damage if it was in a more secluded area that was harder for my Minotaurs to get at it and just dismantle it. So that's my thoughts on the game. I hope you guys enjoyed this battle report, and I will get back to you when I play another game. So, adios, amigos!